Here's a quick little video to demonstrate something that I think is interesting. You can do a lot with simple tools. They just ask more of you. To demonstrate that, here's a ruler. It has two obvious uses. You can measure things with it, and you can draw straight lines by using it as a straight edge. But if you can draw straight lines, you can also measure the flatness of something with it. And that makes a bit of intuitive sense, because while it's very thin and flexible this way, that way it's about an inch thick. It's an inch thick sheet of steel in this direction, so it's not going to move at all in this direction. Unless it becomes like really badly twisted, and at that point you'll be able to see just by laying it flat. You can use this to check for square. You can use it to check for twist. It's very easy to do that. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to take this from a different angle. Okay, so we have our board here from an extremely low angle. And we're going to be using the cork side of this towards us, because otherwise it would possibly cast a shadow. There's the obvious note that you can use this to check for flatness this way. There's a little bit of a dip there, and there, and a little bit less of one right there, but it's still noticeable. That is, it's dipping this way. Okay. Now let's see if it has any kind of cup to it this way. I usually check this kind of thing in 3 different spots. So right there, it's slightly proud. Slightly high in the middle there. Slightly high in the middle there. Now, there's a couple of causes that could be responsible for this. Maybe it's the fact that the wood has changed shape as it's changed moisture content. That's the most likely. Alternately, it could have been planed wrong in the first place, in which case there's a bit of work to do to clean that up. If it's the change in the wood with moisture content, then on the other side it should be shy this way and proud this way. So let's see what we get. Okay, a little bit of gap there, a little bit of a gap there, a little bit of a gap there. Okay, so at least the cup this way seems to be because of the moisture. Now let's try it here. Very, very slightly proud. Again, slightly proud. Slightly proud. Okay. So, in both cases, it seems to be a result of the way that the wood has changed with season, meaning that this was square at one point and it just isn't anymore. And it's a similar story when you're looking at the edge there. Like, there's a dip right there, and if you flip this over, there's a dip there too. I don't remember anymore because this is an old board, but what that tells me is that this was hand planed, because it's shy in the middle on both sides. It's not like it's changed one way or the other. Okay, so that will give you flatness. Or will it? Because if it were flat this way, and here, and here, and here, it could still be twisted. To demonstrate that twist concept, I'm going to use this busted old lid. Okay. That side is basically flat. That side is basically flat. So is that side, and that side. And it's slightly proud in the middle, but this is pretty close to flat on that diagonal there. But from the other corner, it's way off. Compare that to that. And the same principle applies here. If it's flat on one diagonal, but it's twisted, that means that the other 2 corners have to be dipped or proud in some way. Otherwise, if it's flat in both of the diagonals, then it must be without twist. So back over here in our nice low angle, a little bit proud right there, a little bit shy that way, meaning that it should be the reverse on the other side, because that means that these corners are high and these corners are low. So if these corners are low on this side, then they have to be high on that side. So there's a dip in the middle there, and it's proud on that side that way, which is exactly what we would have expected, meaning that this board is slightly twisted. Now this is the kind of thing that if you develop an eye for it, you can gauge that by looking down the board this way. But if you're not confident, this is a good way to prove that to yourself, especially on something small like this. That is, if you don't have a pair of purpose-built winding sticks, or if you don't necessarily trust your purpose-built winding sticks because you're still tuning them. So, with just a ruler, we've been able to determine that this is not flat, and by how much it's not flat, and where. And also that it's got a twist in it, and not just dips and high spots. But I also made the bold claim that you can use just a ruler to check for squareness, not just straightness. Now one step towards that is you can measure the side lengths to make sure that they match each other, at least the opposite side lengths, here and here. Now I've already done that, and I can tell you that this is off of this by 0.5 millimeter, which is small enough that I don't care about it. But that'll only tell you that the sides are the same length. That doesn't necessarily tell you that it's square. After all, these side lengths are the same as these. But notice the other way that these two shapes are different. This distance here closes, and this distance here lengthens. That means that if you actually measure the diagonals and they're the same, that means that these sides are perfectly square to each other. Because there's more markings to read, I'm going to use millimeters instead of inches. And it's easier to read them that way. So, I don't know how well you can see it, but that's 257 millimeters that way. And that's 249 millimeters this way. That means that this diagonal is definitely shorter than that diagonal, so this is not square. Now I happen to have my speed square here, so let's see what that much of a difference actually looks like. Can you see that? That's off by maybe 1 degree or so. But it's way worse on that side. Look at that. Now, as for telling you which side to correct, for that one you might have to measure the sides and the matching diagonal and do some math, but it's at least possible. The easiest way to make up for this is just to buy yourself a combination square or a speed square or something like that and use that to make square lines. But if your square is busted, if it got bent in something, if it took a blow wrong or somebody dropped a hammer on it, or it got twisted, or you just plain don't have one, there are other options. They just make you do a little bit more work. I'm not saying at all that you should use a ruler in place of a square, but there are definitely some tricks that you can use with a known straight edge to check for things like twist and flatness. So, for example, if you're planing a board and you use the edge of your plane, you can check not only for flatness, but also to see if you've gotten the twist taken out, as long as you know the diagonal trick. That, and if the thicknesses match each other on that side, because after all, it could be you made a flat plane, but skewed there. So it's pretty easy to tell a lot without having to reach for other tools of yours, which is mostly what this video was meant to demonstrate.